Meet Billy. Originally from the Netherlands, he moved to Thailand to become an entrepreneur. Many years and many businesses later, he now runs 3 successful ventures. In today's episode, I'm going to find out all about his journey and what made him successful. All right, let's do it. Billy, lovely to have you on the first episode of Next Big Wave that is live. And I think partially inspired by you, actually.
Wow.
So thank you for the suggestions. I'm always listening to new ideas on how to build better content and, make my guests feel special. So welcome.
I truly feel special. I feel honored. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Well, so Billy, we've been friends for a little while. Since I moved to Bangkok, I've seen you in a lot of events. We've interacted quite a bit. But for people who don't know you, in the audience, can you introduce yourself, give us a bit of background on what you've been up to in business world? How did you end up in Bangkok? So just to get to know you a little.
Yeah, for sure. So I moved to Thailand officially 8 years ago while I was still pursuing my Bachelor of Business Administration. And I initially came here for an internship at one of the hotels called Plaza Athénée. And I focused on the banquet department, so organizing the events. And while working there, I immediately met the mentor for my next internship, where I came back for, and immediately wrote my thesis here in Thailand for a company called Everex, which turned out to be the second biggest cryptocurrency company here in Thailand.
Cool.
Now, while I was writing my thesis, I started my first 2 companies. One is called Cryptovation. We did cryptocurrency arbitrage, making money out of the price differences. And the second one is called Dress the Dream, which became a role model social enterprise in the region. Fast forward 1 year, 1.5, I sold everything, took a 1-year holiday, traveled a bit around the world, and then my girlfriend pulled me back to Thailand. And then did a bit of modeling, did a bit of acting, did lots of consulting, lots of random things. And then got together with my current partner, Charlie, to start Recipe roughly 4 years ago, a career consultancy company. And then fast forward 2 years ago, we also opened up startup beat recruitment, one of my main focuses at the moment, as well as a little health and fitness venture with my girlfriend, Jasmine.
Damn, and how old are you again?
I am turning 30 next month.
Oh my God, makes me feel bad to see someone who's got all this background and so young still.
I just started early, man. Even when I was 15 years old, I was doing 5-6 jobs simultaneously.
Oh, wow.
I was washing dishes,
Hustler,
selling social causes on the street, organizing music festivals, you name it. If I could do it, make some money with it, I was doing it.
Did you ever sell candy in class?
I did
like
not
all
sell
these
candy.
hustlers, no?
No.
Never, okay.
You sold candy in class?
I actually did not sell candy. I sold candy to my siblings when we were kids. I would get my mom to buy it and then resell it individually. I did sell donuts in class when I was living in the UK.
Donuts in class?
Yeah, I saw this kid actually who was opening his backpack and selling these jelly donuts at lunch break. And I was like,
genius.
Yeah, I mean, because I knew that if you go to Tesco's or whatever, you can buy a 12-pack for 2 pounds or something. And he was selling them for 20 P's. Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but the margins were quite significant.
Right.
So I started doing that and I failed miserably because what I realized was I bought the toffee donuts and he was selling the jelly donuts and no one wanted toffee donuts.
There you go.
So that's a lesson learned already at 13 years old. But yeah, cool. So, you have a diverse background, which is really interesting for me because I have the exact same thing. I always jump from one industry to another. Is there a reason for that? Are you just a curious guy or you just follow opportunities? How do you end up with what you're doing now?
I guess a combination of things. At one point I also start to ask myself hey, what do I actually want to do? What am I interested in? What is the work environment that I want to be in? And what are my strengths that I can utilize? And I'm all right, I love startups. I love people. And I'm decent at sales. I'm how can I combine these 3? Sell, people, do startups. And here we are.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
So you're a sales guy. So your background is usually scaling, or what's your background typically in the business?
Commercial side, operational side.
Okay. So we're very similar actually.
Yeah, just want to, about that, I know 3 exits, built multiple companies before, but what is your story actually?
Not too far from yours, actually. Traveled a lot in my childhood. Started my first business right out of university.
What kind of business was this?
It was a consulting business. So just to give you a bit of background, like I was working in finance. My goal was to work in investment banking and then hedge funds. I did an internship in London.
Yeah.
And then having worked in finance for a couple summers and then part-time during my last year of university to pay for my school, broke student, you know.
Yeah,
I realized that I really didn't like what I was doing. All I was doing was PowerPoint presentations and spreadsheets. And people just yelling at me to get it done faster and better. So being the guy that I am, I'm not very good with authority, with hierarchy, like just being told what to do with no say in it and no reasoning behind it. When I have an idea, I want to at least voice it and be heard, you know? So I kind of said goodbye to all that corporate world right after university, as soon as I graduated.
And what did you study?
Finance.
Okay.
So finance, trading, etc.
And France?
In Canada, actually. I went to Montreal.
Okay.
I said goodbye to France a long time ago. I'm still French at heart, but I could not see myself living there at all. But yeah, so I started a business. Funny enough, that was in the presentation design. So I hated doing that in my job, but I built a business around it. And to be honest, it worked really well. So built and sold that within 5 years, grew it quite substantially, moved to Toronto. And yeah, the next business was in ad tech, so nothing to do with design and consulting. Well, like a bit of design, I'd say, but still in the creative field. But yeah, the third, TendoPay, fintech.
But hold on, ad tech, what kind of ad tech company was this?
So we provide digital advertising solutions to ad agencies in North America. So whether it's design, animation, development, so like basically the entire process of going from the brief to delivering the digital assets.
So very much focused on the creative side of it. You didn't do the performance, the actual...
No, we didn't do the performance. We did the creative and the code, basically, because all the assets were HTML and all.
Yeah.
And yeah, we had our staff in the Philippines, so that's how I got exposed to the Philippines, basically.
Right. And then moved to the Philippines.
Moved full-time to the Philippines to build
What year was this?
2017.
2017.
Yeah, roughly.
Okay.
Yeah, so no regrets, but I'm glad to be in Bangkok now. Glad to have this fintech behind me and moving on to bigger, better things. But back to you. I don't want to be taking over too much time. I want to, you talked about these last two businesses. I think that's the main focus now.
Yeah.
It's Startup, Breed, and Resubay. I like the name Resubay. I have an assumption of what it's from, but can you tell me more about that? Because I assume it's Resume Bay, but is that correct or not?
Resume bay. But
like a bay,
so. And even our first focus was solely on resumes. So my partner Charlie came up with the idea. He was doing freelance talent acquisition for almost the past decade, and he saw many qualified people that were fantastic matches for the job, not getting invited to the interview because the resume was garbage.
Okay.
So he was like, all right, what if I pull a bunch of HR and recruitment people together to help these people get better resumes so that they get invited to the interview. I accidentally rolled in there as the startup guy, and I'm like, all right, let's take a look at it. We got our first few customers, and we're thinking how to actually write a resume. And then we started to research, find good of best practices, and then it's like, okay, question number one, what are you going to use this resume for? And then the answers were all over the place, from maybe marketing, maybe sales, maybe customer service, maybe a huge corporate, maybe a small startup. I don't know.
Okay.
So we came to the realization there is a much bigger problem at play. People feel lost in the career, lost in the life. They don't see what actually matches them. So we changed the mission from helping you get the job you want to helping you achieve a fulfilling career. And then we started to think about, okay, what do we need for that? Career matching, finding out what fits you. And then career planning, as in finding out what your long-term vision is and then doing a gap analysis. Hey, what do you need for it? Skills, experience, network, knowledge, and maybe if entrepreneurial route, what kind of money? And so we slowly invented these services. Then people knew what they want. They were getting invited to the interview, but failed the interview. We're like, all right, interview training, service. Here we come.
Okay.
Yeah, and like that we developed all the services.
I mean, that's almost like MVP things, huh? Like you add and you iterate and you learn from your audience. It's
very
cool.
much so, very much so.
All right, and then Startup Breed is more on the placement side, right?
Yes, correct. We focus on permanent recruitment for mid to senior level talent.
Okay.
And then our clients, I would say 60-70% are startups, And then the other 30-40% are SMEs and public companies with new generation leadership. So what you often see is that there are family businesses. Then the son may or daughter have studied abroad, worked a few years in startups or consulting or banking, and then comes back, takes a leadership role in the company and wants to innovate, wants entrepreneurial talent. And then it's like, hey Charlie, hey Billy, we need you.
All right, cool. And both of these you've been doing for like 3-4 years, right? You mentioned?
Recipe 4 years, Startup Beat 2 years.
2 years, okay.
Yeah.
And so you have 3 businesses, those 2, and then you're managing your girlfriend's career, like a social media influencer career, something like that, right?
More than just the social media, it is more the overall business sense. So she is the face, she is the subject matter expert, I'm the business guy behind it.
So how do you split your time between those 3? Because 3 businesses for most people seems outrageously a lot of work. Right. 1 is enough, but let's see how you manage that.
Yeah, good question. Difficult at times.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Recipe is almost maintains itself. We have our relationships with the universities. Every year we keep coming back. The clients keep coming in. We have our ops team to manage it. Fairly hands-off, except the final check. Then when it comes to Jasmine's business, Train with Jasmine, it is more like, okay, at times I need to actually get my hands dirty, but she manages most of it together with the team that we're now building for her as well. And then my main focus is Startup Beat recruitment. Okay. That's where I spend, I would say, 70-80% of my time.
Okay. And can you tell us about like the size of these businesses, like where you guys at in terms of revenue? I know it's been a few years already, so are you guys still scaling or has they been stagnant?
Yeah, very much. I mean, Recipe I would say is stagnant. It's like a nice little cash cow. It just keeps ringing.
I love those.
Yeah, it's a beautiful business. But Startup Beat very much scaling, and we're actually working towards a similar goal as yourself, our 1 million a year.
Okay, so you're a candidate for the 1 million ARR challenge.
There
That's
we go.
Awesome.
Tell us more about this 1 million ARR challenge.
It's coming up. I mean, depending on when people watch. Yeah, so that's what I've been working on in the background is like helping founders like yourself in Southeast Asia achieving their goal of 1 million ARR. Leveraging a bunch of different playbooks that I've developed over time with the community and all. But yeah, like that's what I'm working on these days. And I should probably, go through your resume, I think, because I'm always trying to find myself as well. So maybe I'd benefit from being guided in my own career.
Man, that is an interesting point, especially people at this mid-senior, like early to late 30s, those became our biggest customers. We were expecting that students would need it the most. And even though I still believe that, those are not the people that pay for it. Whereas the people that have been 10, 15 years in a certain career and they don't really like it, or they feel like
everyone gets bored eventually, right? That's why even founders like yourself and myself, we do change every 3-4 years, right? We want something new.
Right.
It's just our mind just moves to something else. We were talking about it at the mastermind, like the shiny object syndrome, right? I have that for sure. Do you have that as well, a little bit?
A little bit.
Yeah, because you went from crypto to...
Especially when you now see this AI craziness and everybody doing AI automation and shit. I'm like, am I missing this big opportunity?
You don't want to be chasing, right?
That's true, you don't want to be chasing, but at the same time, like you also don't want to miss these huge opportunities,
of course.
right? It is same as when the internet is invented. It's almost stupid to not jump on top of it.
That one I can understand, but you probably apply AI to your businesses right now, right? I don't know if it's operational or even client-facing.
Mostly operational, not really client-facing just yet, but we are looking at our whole workflow and now thinking about how can we automate it, how can we make it smarter, how can we make it better.
If ever you want me to take an eye on that, I do it for myself and for others all the time. I love automation. Like I do it on the side as a passion project. That's not my business. Like I just love looking at processing and be like, we can automate all of that. It's easy.
Please. Yeah. Yes, please. Very
happy to look at it. So let's talk about scaling businesses, right? Because that's kind of what I like to talk about. That's what I teach. So I want to know more about how you guys are scaling Startup Breed. What have you gone through? Like, and if not Startup Breed, in your past, I know you've had some really interesting stories of like growth hacking. So let's start with Startup Breed and then we move to other prior startups.
Sure. Yeah, with Startup Beat, it is kind of a business where you want to get enough positions per recruiter. So we cap ours at 10. We want between around 10 positions per recruiter to manage at any given time. So our game is, okay, we get 10 positions. I manage them first myself, learn the ropes and everything, develop the playbook. Okay, then let's start overloading myself. Got to 15. Good time for the first hire. First hire comes in, offload a bit, focus more on the BD, scale it further, get more job positions in, close these positions, build up the pipeline, get the next recruiter in, and as such we keep scaling step by step. So it is not the aggressive scaling, we pour a shit ton of money in it, but bootstrapping and profitable since day one.
Bootstrapped. Yep.
Yes, sir. Recipe, we invested a few $100K, but return on investment in the third month, and ever since we have been profitable.
Good stuff. And so in the recruitment game, from what I gather, you have to scale the number of companies you work with who give you jobs to fulfill, and then the number of candidates. So how do you scale both of those sides?
Yeah, we have growth hacking experiments on both sides. So, well, let me start with saying we do all the conventional stuff as well.
Sure.
It has been working. We do the cold outreach on LinkedIn. We do the cold calling. We send out emails and the whole 9 yards. But simultaneously, we're also constantly asking ourselves, what more can we do?
Sure.
Where's the bottleneck in our funnel? Is it on the awareness, the consideration? Are people not converting? And then we come up with a whole team, like on all the experiments, on how can we actually improve it. And then it's a matter of executing it, like, well, first ranking it, what is the probability, the impact, and the ease of doing it, execute the highest ranked ones, and then either it works and it becomes a SOP, or doesn't work and we get some learnings out of it. Learnings in a sense, do we maybe need to tweak some things to make it work, or does it simply not work for our industry?
So can you give me an example of experiments you've ran that was successful?
Yeah, definitely. A silly one is utilizing KOLs within specific communities. So for example, tech talent, especially English-speaking tech talent, is notoriously difficult. Even if you can map that out and get the email address, get the phone number, get the link, whatever it may be, it's still difficult
in
to
Thailand.
convert them. Yes, sir.
Okay.
The demand and supply kind of thingy.
Yeah.
And so what did we do? Well, we had a few KOLs that are in chief technology officer roles, and we asked them, like, very much simply for referrals. And before we know it, instead of just saying, oh, talk to this, they actually gave us a whole list of tech talent on the market that nobody else has access
Beautiful.
to. Yeah, and like that, we're constantly doing these small little experiments of how can we infiltrate very specific communities, online, offline, and how can we utilize it.
Community-based recruitment, and yeah, I like it. I mean, have you tried content creation at all? Is that because I know you work with the content creators, so maybe you've experimented with that.
On the Recipe side, we've done a whole lot of content creation. Even Recipe became popular because of TikTok.
Really?
Yeah, and all the credit to Charlie for this one. He was an early adopter of TikTok himself, and when he told me, I'm like, Charlie, not for Recipe. It's a stupid idea. Please don't do it. And he's like, Billy, please let me do it. And he's like, all right, then go ahead. And before we knew it, videos were getting hundreds of thousands or millions of views, talking about resumes, talking about interviews. Relatively boring content for social media, but he had this twist to it and make it work. And because of that, we got the customers, the partners, the team members, and everything.
I love it. TikTok, I mean, nowadays it's more standardized for business, but you're right, like four years ago, it was like dances, right? No one would touch it.
Exactly. But even our first video from Recipe was like a silly video where at the co-working space, we're literally doing some dances. I'm doing some spinal waves and some stupid shit, but you would be surprised the amount of applications we got to that one video, and especially the quality of it as well.
So basically try everything. You never know.
Yeah, literally.
Cool.
What about you with TendoPay?
Yeah, I mean, it's more boring. It's B2B, right? And we don't get to use TikTok, unfortunately. No, I think like one thing that worked really well for us was, funny enough, creating a podcast. Yeah, and don't get the wrong idea. This is not a lead generation podcast, but no, I mean, what we did is we were struggling. Like traditional outreach was garbage. We were getting 1% response rate.
True.
For email, I mean, on the high end, you can expect about 3-4%. We were getting 1.5%. And we were burning through our list of ICP pretty fast. I mean, in the Philippines, we probably had about 2,000 very specific ICPs. And with a
Those were
response
bigger
rate,
companies with large
yeah,
set of
bigger
employees?
companies, 1,000+ employees, and we would target the HR department, usually all the HR leadership,
Right.
payroll, maybe finances, etc. And we realized like burning through these lists of email with standardized offers. Even I'm still like passionate about how to craft beautiful email outreach campaigns, like very minimal text, etc. So I've experimented with all the innovation in email campaigns as possible. But even with that, we were getting fairly poor response rates. But what I did is I decided, how could I do an email that would force them to respond? Basically, like the idea was to not sell them something, but to offer them value. And the value that we decided to offer was like, let's have them on a podcast to talk about their problems, their trends, what they're interested in, flatter their ego.
And then HR focused.
It was HR focused, exactly. So we called it the HR Champions Podcast. And it's like you're invited to this podcast, right, to talk about yourself, to talk about what you're interested in for once. And
Right.
HR people not often brought into a podcast, right? It's not like one of those roles where it's like, oh, let's have an HR person.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and the podcast itself was, in my opinion, just very low quality. All we did is record Zoom calls, conversations, and without going into too much detail about the strategy, but essentially our response rate went from 1% to over 30%.
Because you invited them to the podcast.
Because all we did was
instead of-
invite them to a podcast, and about half of them would book the podcast. But the beauty is, like, we had trained our sales team to run this podcast very smoothly and to slowly transition to a sale at the end, where by the end of the conversation, after 30 minutes of having a warm conversation, building trust, relationship, and rapport with the ICP, we could invite them onto a demo call. And more likely than not, they would respond, oh, sure, like, why not?
Why not?
Out
Demo
of politeness or
response.
out of interest. But either way, we were,
Take it.
our KPI was demo calls, right?
Right.
So that was extremely successful. I mean, we filled up our pipeline significantly through the strategy. And so that's why I believe in content creation, even if in the end we didn't actually leverage that content to build a brand and to build validation and to even get leads from people watching the podcast, because we published it on LinkedIn, but the
Only
views were quick.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, because it didn't really matter. The idea was to get these leads
People on the
on calls. And the results were in. Like, we got so many calls from that. On average, I trained our whole SDR team of 4 people to run these podcasts. And on average, they were doing 2-3 podcasts a day.
That's fantastic.
It was crazy.
And then
our
just-
best SDR would book 85% of them into a demo.
True.
It's insane.
And
yeah.
how much % of that demo converted?
I mean, there was a normal funnel after the demo. We usually sign like 15% of them into a client, but like, you have to think about, for us, one client, it brings a lot of revenue. Like, especially these clients, 1,000 employees and above, it can have a big impact on our portfolio.
So you really started with doing the email marketing, low conversion rates. How
Yeah,
can we
well,
get them higher?
We had all these different campaigns, right? I'm just telling you how I solved the low response rate of our
Right.
email by adding more value, and it was more like a pull strategy than a push strategy,
enough.
right?
And your first customer, also via email?
Our first customers through networking, a lot of networking, yeah.
That's
I think
always
most
the-
companies are.
Right, I just want to say that also for all the businesses, first customers, personal friends, people
Yeah.
in our circle.
Because at the same time, you're networking because you're trying to validate your business, right?
Yeah.
You're not like running and saying like, I've got this idea, I'm gonna blow up my marketing already. Like, no, you just
That's not how you do it.
yes, raise $1 million and burn it.
Burn it as
Yeah.
fast as possible.
Yeah.
Reach as many people as possible.
All right, so before we move on, I really want to talk about one of the growth hacks you talked about when we were having a discussion offline. Do you remember what that is?
Do you mean the one how we started the Asset Dream initially?
Yeah.
Okay, so a big one in the Asset Dream was that we simply existed for social purpose. So we were one of the first actually implementing the social enterprise model here in Thailand. And with that, we first and foremost got lots of support from the US Embassy. They gave us a few grants, they gave us human resources, and very important, they introduced us to the Stock Exchange of Thailand. And let it be that their color of the month was, we are doing a social enterprise incubation program. And what that meant was that the Stock Exchange of Thailand pushed our business, pushed our idea to all these big public companies. So before we knew it, we had Sansiri organizing large event with us. And when I say with us, it means they did everything. They provided the facility, got the speakers, organized the whole market, you name it. And then the same with Bangkok Airways, we did this huge campaign. Grab was picking up and delivering the dresses all throughout Bangkok, and like that we had many, many more. And then, okay, we had the US Embassy supporting us, the Stock Exchange of Thailand, these huge companies, and we existed for a social cause. Then I ringed up a few of my friends that are in the influencer, acting, actresses, musician community, and they started to post it, and then also asked their friends to post it. And before we know it, we had this massive domino effect, and we reached millions and millions of people throughout Bangkok and Thailand, got thousands and thousands of dresses, and then started to sell to support this woman foundation.
Beautiful. And what happened with that business or that foundation or?
It is still up and running, but I don't think it is too active anymore. But still working, and they're still selling some dresses and still supporting this woman foundation.
Beautiful. Because it was like you donate your second-hand dress and they make a charity out of it.
Right. The thing is, in Thailand, is very much the culture like, okay, I've worn this dress one time to an event. I took some pictures in it. I cannot wear it to the next event. Exactly. So these fancy dresses get hung in the closet and never touched again.
That's wild.
And the founder of this business, her name is June, she saw this issue and she was like, well, what if we collect those and simply resell those and create this circular economy kind of thing?
Beautiful.
And then we also got like loads of celebrities donating their fancy dresses. So then it's not only the fancy dress that you're buying, but also from the celebrity. So we could auction it off and do some cool things with it.
Cool. Okay, so just this is pure curiosity because I like to go deep on like ICP, KPIs and stuff like that. So just like a quick fire for Startup Breed, what's your exact ICP?
Well, we have three, but most favorite one, funded startups, and then it can be from early stage all the way to Series B, because after that they very often get their own talent acquisition and recruitment team, and we only do the very senior confidential kind of roles. But what we love is startups that just raise a bunch of money, that have super ambitious goals and need ambitious people to build together with them.
Cool. And pricing strategy, how did you go about it?
With Startup Breed?
Yeah, I heard the stories.
So our pricing strategy with all the businesses is the same.
Okay.
We start very low, get in lots of customers. They accept that we are not perfect from day number one, and then we slowly start improving until we're like, hey, we're out-competing everyone in the market. We're delivering a better service, yet we're charging less. All right, let's match market rates. And then from there, we keep going and growing it.
Because I think you follow a similar strategy that I do, which is I'll try to raise my price as far as I can get until someone starts saying no.
This is ridiculous. Yeah. Literally. Even with Resume, we started selling our resume writing service for 900 something baht. And then every time we raised it with 500 baht, 1000 baht, and now it is 7,300 baht that people pay for one resume from 1,000 roughly.
Have you gone into the nitty-gritty detail of sort of once you reach a certain level, obviously you get fewer customers at that level.
You would think.
Well, I mean, there's gonna eventually be a slowdown in the number of people you're able to sign at that price, right? But then the amount of value versus the amount of work you do, do you do this type of analysis to kind of get into your exact ROI?
Some back of the napkin kind of calculations, but no exact analysis to go very nitty-gritty in it. No.
Okay. What are the KPIs you look at the most for Startup Breed? What do you focus on?
Deals closed.
That's it?
That is the main one. But we have the whole funnel that comes with it, right? Like how many people did we source? How many people did we screen? From those that we screened, how many did we present? From those that we presented, how many got invited to the first interview? How many to the second interview? How many got an offer? How many of those accepted the offer? So yes, we have KPIs across the whole, KPIs, benchmarks, across the whole funnel, but we care most about how much revenue did we make? Because the reality is, even if somebody presented only 10 people in a month, but all of these 10 people got closed, I'm much happier than somebody who presented 100 but only closed one.
Yeah, of course.
So
and do you kind of regularly review how you monitor your business and iterate on that and kind of change the KPIs you're watching and change the targets, etc.?
We are getting smarter about it, but to be honest, we give the team benchmarks that like, hey, on average, you should be sourcing this much a day. The problem is if I give very fixated KPIs, what many recruitment agencies do, for example, is send out 10 resumes a day. But all of a sudden, if it is for hard to find kind of role, I don't want my team to send out 10 resumes and 9 are going to be shit and my client is going to ask, what's this? Why are you even sending me this?
Yeah.
So quality comes first. That's non-negotiable. Quantity comes second. But then it's still a numbers game at the end of the day. So we do have benchmarks, but then we adjust them based on the difficulty and complexity of the role.
Okay. Speaking of your sales team, how do you keep them motivated? Because I've worked with a lot of salespeople in the Philippines. I don't know if Thailand is similar, but it's very hard to get them to see like the long game sometimes. And like they'll understand the commissions, but if your sales cycles are quite long, they'll be like, well, can you just give me a bigger base and a smaller commission? But then how do you keep them incentivized? Like, have you figured that out for Thailand?
I think it is a problem in any kind of sales-driven organization, even like retention. You see in recruitment agencies, it's anywhere from 6 months to 1.5 years. It's ridiculously low. So it begs the question like, hey, okay, how can you get good people, motivate them and keep them? And we are far from perfect in it. We are still so much to learn and grow. But for us, it really starts with the hiring. Throughout different cycles, it became crystal clear of what kind of person fits our organization, what kind of person we want to have part of us. Then secondly, we do commission, and yes, they're hunting to get the commission, but then we also do some lucky draws, so we try to incentivize them in any way we possibly can. If we hit a certain target, we introduce a new company benefit, and then they can choose, let it be personal development, budget, group insurance, provident fund, and we keep going together and they see things developing as well. So I guess that kind of motivates, but it's still a tricky one where I believe so much to improve. How did you do that? How did you keep your sales team motivated?
Man, we've iterated so many times. I've written literally an SOP on how to keep a sales team motivated in the Philippines. I'll send it to you. It's actually quite interesting. Like there's like a bunch of charts on when bonuses come in and how do you structure like split bonuses, like enhanced bonuses, etc. There's without getting into too boring stuff, but it seems like something you'd be interested in reading. So I'll send it over. I'll send it over for sure. Last question I have for you is about CAC, so customer acquisition cost. I'm a bit of a geek in terms of like numbers and stuff, as you noticed. Is that something you pay attention to in your business startup breed, or it's like kind of a back thought or an afterthought?
Mostly an afterthought, because especially with startup beat, again, we do the conventional stuff, we do the growth hacking stuff, but the reality is lots of the business comes to relationships first and foremost, then over delivering on these first few deals, and then get the word of mouth activated.
But you guys have scaled quite significantly. Like you have 108 or 105 startups you work with in Thailand?
Not necessarily startups, but 110 signed clients, of which I would say 70, 80 are startups indeed.
And like, we all know the stats about startups in Thailand. So that sounds like you own a big chunk of the market already. So how do you scale from there? Are you going to open to new markets, or are you really exclusive for startups?
No, we are not exclusive for startups. Especially last year, we had funding crisis. Startups were not raising money, hiring freezes, thinking about closing shop. It was a gray zone at the time, and we're like, okay, shit, what are we going to do? We have like half of our clients falling out. And then that is how the SME segment came into play in the first place. It's like, okay, how can we use what we have? Who needs similar kind of talent? Well, these SMEs with new generational leadership that want to grow, that want to innovate, and want similar entrepreneurial talent. So then we start serving those. But the problem there is like, how do you know which SMEs have this now next generation leadership that wants to manage as
you
such?
mentioned that, the kind of transition from one generation to the other. I like that. That's a really cool concept. And it's a very Asian concept, right?
I think so.
So, okay, just because, we have this platform, I'd love for you to kind of shout out something just to end this podcast. So anything you want to shout out, whether it's personal, business-wise?
Maybe 4 things.
Oh, wow, 4 things, okay.
But to be honest, the other things that we are already discussing. For anyone that has some career-related needs, resume is your way to go. Anybody that's looking either for a job in an inspiring company or has an inspiring company and is looking for recruitment support, Startup Beat Recruitment is here to
In
help.
Thailand, though.
Yes, in
Okay.
Thailand for now. Thirdly, for those that want to get fit and healthy, check out Train with Jasmine. And then last but not least, for those that want 1 million annual recurring revenue, your boy Tim is here to help.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for coming on. Really
No,
enjoyed the
no.
conversation. Yeah, good stuff. I learned a lot. Like, I always love talking to you. It's so, you have very big passion for what you're doing, and I really appreciate that. So thanks for coming, and I hope we have a follow-up eventually.
Man, I appreciate you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for uplifting the ecosystem and putting out all these beautiful success stories.
That's it, guys. That was an episode of Next Big Wave with Billy, and I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.
Bye.